Dunhuang is a desert oasis in Gansu Province. For centuries, it's been a crucial hub on the ancient Silk Road. It's also home to the Mogao Grottoes, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But how should we view Dunhuang in the modern world? And why does its research remain important today? In this episode of People's Daily Talk, I traveled to Dunhuang to speak with Neil Schmid, the first foreign full-time researcher at the Dunhuang Academy, to explore these questions. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So I noticed Harvard University hosted the Dunhuang Culture Week.
Right.
Through digital exhibitions, musical performances, art workshops, and academic lectures, the U.S. public got to experience Dunhuang culture. So how do you see this event? And do you think it has helped promote understanding of Dunhuang overseas and China-U.S. cultural exchange?
Yeah, well, this event held at Harvard is important because, number one, it's being held at a prestigious institution, and it shows certainly the Harvard community's support and interest in Dunhuang culture. And so it's crucial to have these sorts of events that have a broad range of activities that showcase, in some ways, what we have here in Dunhuang and in Mogao Caves.
So you studied China and East Asian studies and philosophy in the US, Japan, and France. You have also been invited by international research institutions like the Royal Asiatic Society of Great Britain and Ireland to give lectures on Dunhuang. So how does the Western academic world and the general public view Dunhuang? And what should the world know about Dunhuang at this moment?
Well, there needs to be more exposure of Dunhuang and Dunhuang materials, and I think it's events like this and, for example, the Harvard activities that are really important for bringing Dunhuang to the world. But scholars should know more about Dunhuang. And by that I mean, among Dunhuang materials we have so much, there's such a range of materials, so many different fields and disciplines that are represented in the finds from Mogao and also area sites, nearby sites. And these materials are simply not known well enough by scholars, and so events like those at Harvard, or the ability for people to go to exhibitions, these are crucial sites of exposure to bring Dunhuang to these people. The resources from Mogao and archaeological sites nearby, and especially the library cave, Cave 17 at Mogao, have so much materials. There's such a wide range of texts, manuscripts, paintings, votive objects that really give us insights into people's daily lives, and really detailed insights as well. And so these materials we can see as a kind of data set, right? There's all this vast interconnected material and data that allows us to treat Mogao and the library cave materials as this kind of data set, as a kind of laboratory that we can use to explore different aspects of human life over centuries of time. And we can ask new questions, questions that we didn't even know we could ask, and use these materials really to have insights in ways that we can't do in any other place. I really believe this, right? The materials here are so unique. They're so complete. They're so in-depth. And the thing is, they're all in one space, in one time, right? They're all connected here in this location. So it's both what we'd say diachronic and synchronic. And this is crucial. There's no other cohesive data set for example, medieval life anywhere in the world like we have here. And it's also like an ethnographic collection, right? So it's this really fascinating collection of materials that are not triaged, right? They're not vetted. They were simply put into a cave, sealed up, and then forgotten about, and then discovered 900 years later. And it's these materials that allow us to have these incredible insights into medieval life that, again, we can't do anywhere else.
This brings me to another question. You visited Dunhuang multiple times before joining the Dunhuang Academy as the first full-time foreign researcher in history, and also you have been living in and working in Dunhuang for more than 6 years. So I wonder, what new observations do you have about Dunhuang?
The first time I came was in 1987, a long time ago. And China was a different place. And so I've seen the evolution of China. My first time to China was 1984, so that was 40 years ago, right? That was a long time ago. And I've seen this incredible transformation of a country, of a society, of a culture that has transformed in ways that for me at that time are inconceivable. So I could never have imagined in my lifetime that I would be living in a China like this. And that's miraculous in some ways. And I really firmly believe that there's never been such a transformation in human history, right? That's as fast and as stable, right? And this is incredible. I've seen a change in China, I've seen a change in Dunhuang, but even over the last 6 years, I've seen really fantastic changes here in terms of infrastructure. Everything from roads to parks to public services. And this is impressive. It's impressive that it's been done so quickly and so thoroughly and really affected people's daily lives in such positive ways.
You compared Dunhuang to a data set, so I wonder, how does it help your studies?
Well, first of all, I feel extremely honored to have been invited to come here on a permanent basis. And I would have never thought that I'd have this opportunity, given that I've been in love with Dunhuang for so long. But being here on site has transformed my research. So it's allowed me to spend literally hundreds of hours in the caves and digest all the complex materials that we have here. Visually complex, historically complex. It allows me to do research where I can begin to see connections among materials across phenomena. It's very difficult to do if you're not on site. And there is so much to discover here. There's so much material. And several lifetimes isn't enough, and there's always so much more to learn. And so there's always this sense of excitement, but also this sense of awe, which is why I'm here. I can experience this profound sense of awe, both in the landscape here, in the Gobi Desert, of course in the caves, but also there's a sense of awe of the human creation, right, and the human creativity that we see in the caves. And that, I feel so lucky. I feel so incredibly fortunate to be able to experience that.
I wonder, for someone like you, do you think every time when you visit Mogao Grottoes, do you think it's still like a new experience?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Going to those caves, which I've been in dozens, some of them dozens and dozens and dozens of times, I still discover new things, right? I still see things that I hadn't really seen or hadn't really understood before. So there's, every time I go into a Mogao cave, I'm happy.
I visited the Mogao Grottoes yesterday, and I thought those caves are small. Like, it's a small place, but it can host so many elements at the same time. Yeah. And I think that's very fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, there's something beautiful about the Mogao caves and the culture they represent, because there are so many cultures coming together, so many different ethnicities. And we look at a cave, for example, cave 285 or 249, and we have Hindu deities, and we have Greek influences, and we have indigenous Chinese folk gods, and of course we have Buddhism. And we have all these gods and cultures mixed into a single space, right? A single space. And they're painted on the walls or painted on the ceilings. And there's nothing conflictual about that. There's nothing conflictual about these cultures coming together or these ethnicities coming together. And it's not some sort of zero-sum game, right? Where one needs to be dominant over the other. They're all there together. And there's something really beautiful about that. And there's that kind of tolerance that we see in the Mogao caves that is exemplary, right? So cultures coming together across Eurasia, across the Silk Road, coming together, meeting in one place, and blending harmoniously. And there's something beautiful about that.
But how can the world learn about China's Dunhuang cultural protection?
This is a good question. And there are different ways to do this. It can be through media, for example, interviews. It can be through documentaries or docudramas, so films. Certainly museum exhibitions. There was a very, very successful museum exhibition at the Getty Museum, sponsored by the Getty Conservation Institute and the Dunhuang Academy in 2016. It was hugely successful. And it drew hundreds of thousands of people, and it showed that Americans, for example, can be extremely interested But it has to be that encounter, right? There has to be an engagement. So the question is how to promote that engagement.
The encounter has to happen first, and then the interest can be enhanced or enlarged.
Exactly. But there's something wonderful about Dunhuang and the Mogao caves and this Dunhuang culture is that it's very seductive. It's stunning. It's visually stunning. And so I think that can be an entree to bring people in, to make them curious. But there's also something very interesting about Dunhuang culture, Dunhuang materials that shows how, for example, we have Christian elements here, or there are texts in Hebrew. We have so many different scripts and languages. And so I think when people understand, oh, there's an image of Jesus that is, it looks like a bodhisattva, Pusa, but in fact it's Jesus. And when people in the West understand that and see that, they realize that, okay, well, it's not so foreign, right? There are elements of our cultures there as well. And so these can be lead-ins to bring people and say, oh, well, what is a bodhisattva? What is a Buddha? What's this overlap? What's this connection here? And then begin to unpack that and explore.
Since the 1990s, the Dunhuang Academy has been exploring digitalization. And I saw on your social media, you gave a shout out to this game, the Digital Library Caves, which was launched last year in Chinese, English, and French version. Very impressive. And this reminds me of the video game, very popular video game, Black Myth Wukong. I haven't played it, honestly, but it's very popular. It's a phenomenal. And so we're living in this digital world. We're living in a digital age. What thoughts do you have for sparking the young generation's interest in Dunhuang?
It's this, we might say, is transmedia, right? This is an excellent way because it's engaging, it's entertaining, it's also educational. If you can't come here, we, as somebody who is passionate about Dunhuang, we need to bring Dunhuang to the world.
I think the point maybe should be placed on how to make young people to actually be interested in the culture side of Dunhuang instead of just come here and take photos and try local food. I mean, those are important parts of traveling. But if we want to continue the studies of Dunhuang, if we want to tell the stories of Dunhuang to a larger audience, you have to understand Dunhuang from a deeper sense. And I think that has a lot to do with the work of scholars like you. Like, you still need to try to make your research or maybe make your work maybe easier to be understood by a wider audience.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. This is a responsibility that scholars don't always take on, which is to in some ways popularize their findings. Because if you have a limited amount of people actually reading the scholarship, we can do better than that. And so the wonderful thing about Dunhuang and materials from Mogao is that you can find everything. So somebody who is interested in fashion, for example, can through, because we have a project here to do a sort of encyclopedia, if you will. So this large collection of books on different fashions found in different caves over the entire chronological period. And so if you're interested in fashion, for example, it's an entree, it's an entry point into Mogao culture, because you say, oh, well, that's an amazing textile, or that's an incredible pattern. Who's wearing it? What's the historical period? What ethnicity is that? What's the historical context? And we can do that with art, right? Visual arts. We can do it with music, right? We have this incredible array of musical instruments. Dance, right? Dance is represented on the wall. So all the arts. Never mind things like economics and mathematics and astronomy, anything. All of humanity's, range of curiosity is represented in these caves. And so there's always a way for example, for young people, say, oh, well, I'm interested in fashion, right? Then, okay, so let's begin looking at that and then, go from there.
There is a saying, Dunhuang belongs to China, but Dunhuang studies belong to the world.
Right, yeah. No, that's a great saying. And I think it's important because it really captures the complexity, right? Both local and international, right? So the complexity that's local here, found in this particular site, but the humanity of the site that is universal, right? That it belongs to all of us as fellow humans. And so what we need to do is we need to promote Dunhuang and Dunhuang studies and, if you will, Dunhuang culture in the West. This is absolutely crucial.
You raised two terms in your response, Dunhuang culture and Dunhuang studies. How do you see the relationship between the two?
Well, Dunhuang studies is the academic field, or fields, right? It's quite complex, but that Dunhuang studies, the fact that it's its own field of studies, shows you how rich it is, how incredibly complex it is. Dunhuang culture, that's an interesting term because I think it doesn't do justice. It doesn't do justice to the complexity of the materials. So if I were to say New York culture, where would you go with that, right? I think in some ways it's strangely reductive, this term Dunhuang culture. I mean, it's human culture, but it's also the culture that we would have found in Chang'an, for example, in the Tang Dynasty, right? So I guess we could talk about Chang'an culture, but it's Chinese culture, right? In this case, it's Silk Road cultures.
To study archaeological sites or ancient sites, you need funding. You need financial support.
Yeah. So this is the great thing that I really appreciate about being here in China and working at the Dunhuang Academy, because there's so much support. There's government support. There's popular support. There's popular interest. We don't find that in the West, and this is unfortunate. I mean, there are a lot of materials in the West that people should be studying and should be examining from Dunhuang, that there's simply not the funding. There's simply not the government funding for this, for Dunhuang studies. And that's something truly wonderful that I find about being here in China, and the ever-growing interest in Dunhuang, but also in heritage, right? In Chinese heritage, and the role that the government has played in preserving heritage and funding the study of heritage, right? So it's not just funding scholarship, but education also, right? So helping people understand and helping people appreciate here in China, Chinese culture, that needs to be expanded to the world. So.
But it can be a lonely job because you said for a long time you are the only foreigner living in Dunhuang, but you still chose to study Dunhuang, and you said something like you will commit your whole life to studying Dunhuang. So what is the point of studying Dunhuang? Like if you sum it up in one sentence.
Well,
like why should we care about Dunhuang?
Why should we care?
Why should we care?
Because it is in some ways the best of humanity, and this is why. Because it really represents us at our best, us at our most creative, us at our most human, and there's something to be learned from that. There's something stunningly beautiful about not simply the visuals in the caves, but also the conceptual aspects, right? The diversity. Right, the blends of culture, and this is something that we need to appreciate more and more these days. Right?
And you're also working on a manual for foreigners to better understand Dunhuang.
Right,
and how did it go?
Well,
you're too busy.
No. It's funny because this manual that I'm doing is to introduce scholars outside the field of Dunhuang studies to all the range of materials that we have. So if you're interested in economics, or if you're interested in literature, if you're interested in fashion, whatever, who are the Chinese scholars that we can turn to see what's been done? You know.
Oh.
Yeah. So
it's like a little guidebook.
It's a guidebook, yeah, and especially for Chinese scholarship that needs to be communicated to Westerners.
That's very important.
Yeah, this is important. But I started it and I thought, I'll finish this in a couple of years. There's so much.
But it turned out to be a huge
It's
project.
A huge project, yes. And my assistant left. She went to France.
Okay, we're hiring a new assistant.
I was a little naive because there's so much scholarship. And there's ever more and more, right? It's ever increasing. Yeah. I think it's an extremely important project because I need to communicate to the world what people are doing here. And there's so much really, really good scholarship on all aspects of Dunhuang.
It's one of those important ways to bridge Chinese scholars with Western scholars.
Yeah.
You have to present your work to the outside world.
Exactly. I wanted to do this because, number one, I want to learn everything about Dunhuang, right? I want to learn every field, right? Every aspect. But also because I think it's really crucial that Westerners, you know, whether academics or educated public, have a better knowledge. And if they understand the breadth of materials that we have here and the range of scholarship that is being done here, that would be a big help. So.
There is so much we can use for reference. And when we look back on the murals of the caves, and also I think that's why it's called the museums on the wall.
Yes. Yeah.
Very vivid comparison.
Yeah. But there's something a little static about the word museum, right?
Yeah.
And these are experiential spaces, right? So when we go into a Mogao cave, it's immersive. You're totally immersed in a space from the Tang Dynasty. And there are very few places worldwide, right, where you can go back to a space that is exactly the same as it was 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. And these caves are so well preserved that they preserve that experience, that immersive experience. And that's truly, truly unique. So we need to think of the caves this way, as multi-sensory experiences. And then we can recreate those in some new ways, in some new innovative ways. But there's so many resources there, conceptual, visual, artistic.
And I think it points the direction for future maybe curators or exhibition designers to
Absolutely.
how to attract more viewers and tourists to appreciate the beauty of Dunhuang.
Right. We should try to create immersive experiences elsewhere, right, that again bring Dunhuang to a larger population, to the general public. And that can be done through multi-sensory experiences. It should be done through multi-sensory experiences. Right? So.
All right, thank you, Professor Schmid, for making some excellent points. For many reasons, the story of Dunhuang deserves to be told and continued. Thank you very much.
Bowen, thank you very much for having me.